Hello guys, welcome back to our channel. Before I start with the video, please be sure to like, comment and subscribe, and let us know which other video ideas you have or what you would like to see in the following video. So today we're going to be learning about how to plot a linear equation, right? So what is a linear equation? A linear equation is an equation that has a one-to-one relationship, meaning that it's in the format of y is equals to mx plus c, where y is your dependent variable, x is your independent variable, m is your gradient or your slope. So that tells you if whether your graph is going to be increasing or decreasing. So this is usually a negative if your graph goes from left to right, but if it's increasing if your m is positive, so it goes from downwards left going up. Okay, and then your c is your y-intercept. So I'm just gonna do the first example. Okay, so here we have y is equals to 2x plus 1, right? So this is your function. This is your gradient or your m. This is your y-intercept. So that means this is where your function is gonna honestly touch your 1, right? Okay, let's try drawing this out. Okay, so we have y is equals to x plus 1, where your 2 is your gradient or your slope, 1 is your y-intercept. So from just looking at this function, our gradient or our m or our 2 here is positive. So we know that our graph is going to look something like this. If our 2 was negative, our graph would have looked something like this. So that's like the first tip in terms of knowing how your graph is going to be shaped. So 2 is positive, so you're expecting something like this. And then we know that it's going to go across positive 1 on our y-intercept, right? So now we have to find our intercept, right? So for x-intercept, let y be equals to 0, right? So now we're going to take our equation, which is y is equals to 2x plus 1. Wherever there's a y, we put a 0. Then we have 2x plus 1. And then we're just going to transpose the 2. So we're going to put negative 2x whenever you transpose it to the other side. Okay, so we're going to transpose our 2x to the left. And if you don't know how to solve equations or linear equations, we have a video that we'll link down in the description box. So we're gonna just transpose the 2 and it goes to the left hand side, so the sign is gonna change to negative 2, and then on the right hand side we're gonna be left with 1, so that is positive 1. And then we're just gonna divide this side by negative 2, divide by negative 2, so x is negative 1 over 2, right? So that is our x-intercept, meaning that this graph is gonna cut where x is negative 1 over 2 and 0. So there's 2 points. That's point A. That's our point A. So let's find our second point, right? So we're gonna say for y-intercept, let x be equals to 0. So we're gonna write this equation down. Y is equals to 2x plus 1. So y is equals to 2. Where there's an x, we put a 0 plus 1. Then therefore our y is equals to 1, right? Okay, now let's try and plot this equation out. So our point B is now 0, which is this one, and 1. So I'm just gonna lightly plot this equation here. Okay, that's our y, that's our negative y, that's our x, that's our negative x. So let's see, we have 1, we have 2, we have 1, we have 2, we have negative 1, we have negative 2, negative 1, negative 2. So this is continue. So our first point is -1/2. So our -1/2 is between 0 and -1, which is somewhere here. So that's our first point, point A. And then our y is, when x is 0, y is 1. So it's somewhere this point here. And then our line is just going to move like this. And then you're just going to write y is equal to, where is it, 2x plus 1. I'll just make it bigger on the other page so that you see clearly. So our second example is y is equals to -2x plus 1, which is similar to the first example, but I changed the 2. Instead of being positive, I put in a -2. So with this graph on the previous example, I did say that since our gradient is +2, our graph is going to look like this. But now our gradient is negative, so expecting our graph to go like this. So let's see if my point is correct, right? So the first thing is we're gonna do is for x intercept, let y be equal to 0. So 0 is equals to -2x plus 1. Then we're just gonna transpose this, becomes 2x is equals to 1, x is equals to 1/2. So that's our point A, which is 1/2 dot 0, right? And then now let's do for y intercept, let x be equal to 0. So we have y is equal to -2x. Okay, so y is equal to -2x plus 1. So let x be equal to 0. So y is equal to -2 into 0 plus 1. So y is equal to -2 times 0 is 0. So our y is 1. Therefore, our point B is 0 and 1. So now we're going to plot our graph. We're going to plot our graph here. That's our positive y, that's our negative y, that's our positive x, that's our negative x, that's our 0. So 0 and 1. So let's put our 1 here. Let's put our 2. Put our 1 here. Let's put our 2. That is -1. This is -2. That's -1. That is -2. Right? So point A is 1/2 and 0. Then point B is 0 and 1, right? Let's start with point A. So point A says x, which is this term here, x is 1/2. So 1/2 is between 0 and 1, which is somewhere here. That's our intersect, but y is 0, so it's somewhere here. That's point A. And then point B is when x is 0, y is 1. So it's somewhere here. That's point B. A is 1/2. And point B is 0 and 1, right? So our gradient is negative, like I said, and we're expecting our graph to go something like this. So let's now join here, right? And then now we have our graph, which is y is equals to -2x plus 1. Plus 1. So this is basically the opposite of that other equation. So because here on the first example our gradient was positive, so our graph went from here to there. If your gradient is negative, your graph always goes like this. So that's like a general rule of thumb. Know that you're incorrect if your graph, if your gradient is negative and your graph goes something like this. So that means there was some incorrect calculations. So that's just like a general rule of thumb. So we're gonna do our third example. now, okay, so third example, we have y is equals to 4x plus 3. So this is our gradient, that's our y-intercept. So we know that obviously our graph is gonna go through, on the y-intercept, it's gonna touch positive 3. Our gradient is positive, so we're expecting our graph to be shaped something like this, right? Okay, so step number 1, for x-intercept, let y be equals to 0. So we're gonna have 0 is equals to 4x plus 3. So we're going to transpose to negative 4x is equals to 3. Therefore our x is gonna be negative 3 over 4. So our first point is negative 3 over 4 and 0. So that's the first point we have. So for y-intercept, let x be equal to 0, which is like the opposite. So we're going to have y is equals to 4 into 0. So whenever there's x on our formula, we just put 0 plus 3. Y is equals to 4 times 0. 4 times 0 is 0, which is 3. So that's point A. Our point B is going to be 0 and 3. So now let's try and draw this or plot this graph. So we have this. Let's see, we have 3 on y. So that's 1, that's 2, that is 3, 1, 2, that's 3, negative 1, negative 2, negative 3, negative 1, negative 2, negative 3, right? So our first point, which is A, is negative 3 over 4 and 0. Our point B is 0 and 3, right? So negative point A is going to be, so negative 3 over 4 is somewhere between 0 and 1. So it's somewhere here. And then intercept is 0. So that's point A. Point B is when x is 0, y is 3. So we're gonna now draw in this. Y is equals to 4x plus 3. So that is how you plot this graph. Okay, so final example for this video, we have y is equals to 1 over 2x plus 5. So previously we said for x-intercept, let y is equals to 0. So we're going to say y is equals to, 0 is equals to 1 over 2x plus 5. Then we're going to transpose this, becomes negative 1 over 2x is equals to 5. So now we just cross multiply. This is going to be negative x. Then there's going to be just 10. Therefore, x is equals to negative 10. So our point A is negative 10 and 0. That's point A. And then for our y-intercept, let x be equal to 0. So y is equals to 1 over 2, 0 plus 5. Y is equals to 5. So point B is just going to be 0 and 5. Let us plot this now. We're now plotting this. This is positive y, that's negative y. It's x and negative x. Be sure to label your x's, because some people or some teachers that mark, they can deduct points if you don't label your x's. Our x-intercept is negative 10. I'm just gonna do in 5. So negative 5, negative 10, That's 5, and that's 10. You can put in any number as long as it can fit in here. -5, -10. So point A is -10 and 0. Point B is 0 and 5, right? So when x is -10, y is 0. So that's point A, -10, 0. And then for point B, when x is 0, y is 5. So it's here. X is 0, y is 5. So now we join. And then we just write down here y is equals to 1/2x plus 5. So yeah, thank you so much guys for watching this video till the very end. That's how our graph looks like. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and happy learning. Looking forward to coming back to our next video. Bye bye.